Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial will pick back up tomorrow, with court in recess today in this historic trial. On Friday, former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker wrapped up his testimony. Wow. The defense tried to poke holes at his credibility as a witness, seeking to establish how his tabloid stood to profit off the stories it bought. Earlier in the week, Pecker testified about catch and kill agreements linked to Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. But before his testimony ended, Pecker revealed details about a conference call Trump set up between the tabloid publisher and two of Trump's White House aides, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Hope Hicks. The call took place soon after former Playboy model Karen McDougal gave an interview to CNN in March of 2018. On the call, Pecker told the two aides he planned to extend an agreement with McDougal that would keep her from speaking more widely about her alleged affair with the former president. Pecker said Sanders and Hicks, quote, thought it was a good idea. Joining us now, former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin.
You know, Lisa, it's interesting. The argument that the defense was making really fell flat when they suggested that Pecker was doing this for profit, all of this for profit, when in fact, if he had run the McDougal-Trump story, it probably would have broken records. But he decided to sit on it because, as he said throughout his testimony, he wanted to help Donald Trump, his friend, get elected president.
That's true. And, Joe, it was really underscored by the fact that in much of his testimony, David Pecker's bottom line was clear as the primary motivating factor for him. But as Joshua Steinglass, who is a representative of the DA's office, established with him on his redirect, yes, it was to his benefit to run positive stories about Donald Trump, who had long been a reader favorite among National Enquirer readers. But as Steinglass asked him, your intention was never to run this story about McDougal, and Pecker affirmed, I had zero intention. He said, in fact, if you had run it, that would have been equivalent to National Enquirer gold, right? And Pecker had to say, absolutely, it would have been Enquirer gold. It's a story about a Playboy Playmate of the Year who was alleging, and a story I believed, by the way, a years-long affair with the Republican candidate for president of the United States, who was also a known celebrity and commodity in my universe. That would have been Enquirer gold. And at that point, we broke for lunch. And it was the perfect point for the DA to have reestablished this was far from what the Trump world was calling standard operating procedure for the Enquirer.
So, Lisa, there was a lot from the Pecker testimony about affairs, hush money, catch and kill, the whole concept of that type of journalism, none of which is against the law or the crime that he's accused of, the former president. Did Pecker's testimony help prove or begin to help prove the crime that he's accused of?
Absolutely, because, Mika, the crime that the former president has been charged with is falsification of business records as a felony. And in order to establish that he's committed a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor, you have to show that he falsified business records with the intent to conceal another crime. And that's where David Pecker comes in. David Pecker is critical to the establishment of the conspiracy to promote Trump's election through unlawful means, where at least one act was taken in the direction of those unlawful means. David Pecker was there for the formation of the conspiracy. David Pecker helped execute the conspiracy. David Pecker's payment to Karen McDougal, which he understood would pose campaign finance law problems, was that unlawful means. So through David Pecker, prosecutors have gotten a lot of what they needed to establish that this was felonious and not just your, everyday garden variety misdemeanor.
Trying to pull back, does that testimony seem to add value to what the DA is trying to prove? Did we expect Pecker to be as strong as he was, or were we looking for that in other witnesses that are yet to come?
Well, Pecker had a lot of information that we didn't quite know that he would have. Namely, he put himself at multiple conversations either with Donald Trump and Michael Cohen or with Donald Trump alone that help establish that Trump was a participant in the conspiracy and that he knew and intended the results of that conspiracy, which were to promote his own election by subverting the Karen McDougal story. And so nobody was expecting that David Pecker would come in and say, for example, I met with Trump alone in his Trump Tower office in January of 2017. He asked me how Karen McDougal was doing, which was less about care about her welfare and more about was she going to be quiet and compliant. And once I assured him that she was fine, he said, I want to thank you for handling the McDougal situation. I want to thank you for handling the doorman situation. Donald Trump was so grateful that he let David Pecker essentially throw himself a White House dinner that summer, after which, as they're walking in the Rose Garden, Donald Trump resumes that same conversation. How's Karen? How's she doing? All Donald Trump cared about was that David Pecker had an arrangement with Karen McDougal that allowed her to feel satisfied that she was getting something out of the deal. It became clear through David Pecker's testimony that Donald Trump had the knowledge and intent that prosecutors not only want to establish, but have to establish as part of their case.
Kept asking, how's our girl? How's our girl? David Beschloss, we have been watching for about Michael Beschloss, I'm sorry. It's really
David
early.
is
It's
fine.
Monday.
David Pecker.
I was thinking David Pecker, Michael Beschloss.
The two of us were sort of two
No,
of
they
a kind.
Right? No, exactly.
Witnesses to history.
Exactly.
Right?
So
Said
I
both
was
of us.
Yes, exactly. So I was thinking back, starting in 2016, 2017, Donald Trump started calling the media enemy of the people. He constantly throughout the campaign talked about fake news, derided mainstream press. And it is so interesting that, sometimes the New York Times gets it wrong. Sometimes NBC gets it wrong. Sometimes the Post, Washington Post, sometimes Wall Street Journal. And they'll get the facts wrong, despite all the editors they have and their best efforts. And then they'll
retract.
Usually they'll retract it and they'll correct it. It happens. When you get 1,000 stories right, you may get one or two wrong. And yet, Trump has seized on what they've got wrong, or sometimes what they've got right, and completely undermined a majority of America's confidence in the media. Here you have laid out the definition of fake news. And we got to see how Donald Trump masterminded lies about Ted Cruz, that his father had helped kill JFK. Ben Carson destroyed somebody's life by leaving a sponge in their brain. Hillary Clinton saying back in 2016 she has 6 months to live, which, of course, Hillary's doing well, we can report, 7 years later. But one lie after another lie after another lie after another lie that was put out to voters throughout that campaign. And you just talk about cynically undermining the news. It is a move out of the old Soviet playbook, which is try to undermine those telling the truth, and while you are spreading propaganda through a fire hose of falsehoods.
Yeah, that's perfectly put. And I guess if he were running against Kristi Noem, it wouldn't have been a good enough story that she kills puppies when it actually happened in real life. So they would have had to invent something worse, amazingly enough. But that's what authoritarian dictators do. You know, Soviet Union is exactly where they did it. When you saw people who were vilified in Pravda, let's say at the orders of Stalin, which they oftentimes were. For instance, there was a chief of police called Beria, and Beria was fired. And this is a little bit later on, the Great Soviet Encyclopedia, which is obviously published by the government, people were told to tear out the page that mentioned Beria and insert a page of the Bering Strait. That is what our lives could be like under that kind of dictator if that ever happens. You know, you were talking about 1968, which I think is a perfect comparison because Donald Trump, knowingly or otherwise, is operating to some extent from Richard Nixon's blueprint. You remember? Well, you don't remember, but I remember that Nixon used to give speeches saying when respect for the President of the United States and tumult in this country has become so tumult has drowned out the president's voice that he can no longer speak almost anywhere except for military bases. It's time for new leadership, he said. And Johnson at the time was not able to speak on college campuses. Same year, George Wallace was campaigning, in arenas saying, everyone look at those reporters back on the platform. Those are bad people. You should go after them. Who does that sound like?